This one's gonna suck. Like, it's gonna really, really suck. But I have to tell you about this one. Well, hello there, my dear children of the apocalypse. How are we doing today? Welcome back to the 52 weeks of self-improvement in 2023, and welcome to mental masturbation. Now, we know what masturbating means. What does mental masturbating mean? Well, essentially, if this was an equation, a mathematical equation, it would boil down to a lot of reading, a lot of consuming, a lot of educating, a lot of learning, a lot of ingesting, but very little of it comes out. Essentially, if I make an analogy with food, which is a very poor one, but imagine that you were to eat huge quantities of food, but never go to the toilet, right? It wouldn't go that way. You'd get bloated and eventually you'd blow up. What happens with mental masturbation and the area where it's most prominent, it is ironically in the self-improvement community. So what happens? You pick up a book, right? You pick up a book on investing. Let's say it's investing or crypto or whatever, and you're reading it, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you read it. You read the next one, you read the next one. You've read all these books. Your mind is filled with ideas. It's filled with all this knowledge, but yet you do nothing. You make no changes, you do no action, and things remain the same. You're armed with the knowledge that you just cannot utilize. Let's say instead that you're reading on dating. You're interested in getting yourself a girlfriend. So what do? You go on these coaching communities, right? And you practice, and maybe you go on Tinder and you shoot a couple of messages just to see what works and doesn't. You make a fake male profile just to kind of get an idea. And you're reading, and you go into, like, you read Rolla Tomasi, The Rational Male, and you educate yourself. You watch all these podcasts, 2, 3, 4 hours. You go and you binge watch Andrew Tate, and you're like, oh yeah, you get all hyped up. You're like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna get ourselves. But you don't go out. You don't get a date. You don't talk to anyone. You don't actually make any effort whatsoever to move from point A to point B. You just kind of sit there and you just wait. It's Joe Rogan once said famously, actually it's not very famous, it's famous to me, but he said once in a stand-up, really old stand-up, he said, I don't know what you do when the lights go out, when the electricity runs out, but what I do is I sit around and I wait. And that was a whole bit from one of his stand-ups when he's actually emphasizing just how stupid he knows he is. Because he doesn't know how electricity works, he doesn't know, he wouldn't be able to go to the power plant and fix it. He would just sit there and he would wait for somebody else to do it. And if we go back to what we were talking about, you consume the information. If you watch a video from me and I tell you that what you should be doing is you should hit the gym, do a couple of push-ups, and you'll look all muscular and you'll feel better. And you look at the video and you think, oh wow, that's a great idea, I should do it. And 5 seconds later, you're swiping on TikTok. Listen here, my man, that's the problem. That's the mental masturbation part, is a lot of the times consuming the information makes us feel like we've already made 90% of the effort. We get a really good idea. Let's say it's for business. Let's say it's for a phone app. We get a brilliant idea for a phone app. That's 10%. Our mind makes us feel like we've just done 90% of the work because we've just come up with something brilliant. But what our brain doesn't realize is that the actual work that's needed to create the app, to get the design, to get it approved on Apple and Android, to get it developed, to test it. Our brain doesn't comprehend the amount of money, time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears that are going to go into it before we can actually get the product out there and see if it even is a good idea. We get satisfied with just the tiniest of crumbs, and we feel like we've won the world over. And so mental masturbation comes down, and it's a deterrent for every single one of us. All of us fall prey on a daily basis to this process. We get hyped up by things, and these days everything around us is so strong. It's, it's very visual. If you think about social media, you think about what we read now, the advancement of AI, it's all happening so fast, and it's all so flashy and in your face and clickbaity, and it's trying to pull you in, from all different directions. It almost feels like your body, rather your mind, is being, torn to bits. In the old days, how they used to torture people, they would tie their limbs and then pull them apart with a rope. Now imagine that somebody's doing that with all the different bits of your brain. Horrible, horrible thing to do. And so if you go back to the very beginning, and I believe it was the first episode of this series, the very first week of 2023, I said action. It's about action. In my case, I said I'm going to have to make a video every single week. And there are times I don't feel like doing it. I'm lazy. I'll make it next week. I'll make 2 videos next week. No, you have to stick true. You have to keep pushing, keep doing the action. This video is going to be very short. It doesn't have to be long, in fact. And I will leave you with a quote from the latest book that I've read, which is called Ego is the Enemy. And what I loved about it is that one of the chapters in this book is essentially about action, about how all that it really matters is that you continue moving. And what I've flipped it apart, and I said, how do I attribute this, which I've read, this information to me? And what I find helps me with not mentally masturbating all the time is that I take the information I receive, whether it's read or listened to in a podcast or given to me by a friend. I try to take that information and transcribe it in my own words, write it down. This is why I'll put it into an essay, or I'll put it into the book that I'm working on, which might never see the light of day, but as long as it's creating something and moving words, turning them around, writing them again, it helps me a little bit better to understand what the context of that sentence or word, or really a paragraph, or maybe a page, or maybe an entire chapter, what has that author tried to put in black letters on that white piece of paper? What is it that his message was to me, and what can I do with that information to the best of my knowledge? And how can I use that info that I write down today, tomorrow, to get something turning, to get one wheel, one cog in this massive machine of ours just perpetuating? Is that really what it boils down to? The solution to not mentally masturbating is as simple as action. But if you're going to combine reading, educating, informing, consuming with no activity, with no way to get that energy which you're obtaining somewhere, your brain will start to cycle. It will start to cycle, and you're going to feel like you're making a load of progress. And that's where the trap lays. Your mind, likely very much this is collected to your ego, is going to feel like you've made so much progress. You're better than everybody else because you've read all these books. You hear all these beautiful podcasts. You've been given all this, divine information which lives in your head. None of it matters if you cannot put it out there into the world in action form. So what I want you to do today is, at the end of this video, if there's any moment at any given point throughout the last 9 minutes that your brain went click and you were like, wow, this reminds me of something that I should have done, months or years ago, do it first thing tomorrow. Write it down on a piece of paper or a whiteboard or whatever you have. First thing tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're going to do that thing that you've been putting off for so long. And trust me, you are going to have a fantastic day if you do that, because what you'll be doing is unloading a huge amount of stress from the back of your head. You're going to be laying the burden onto the world and giving yourself a little bit of freedom whilst knowing that you've made something good for yourself. Try it and thank me later. Take care. I'll catch you in the next one.